Why do new CEOs, especially if the outsiders, fire managers? This is one of the conversations we were having yesterday with a leadership class that I was taking senior professionals through. And the reason why it came up is because in the last few months, we've seen a trend where a new CEO is hired, and before you know it, before 3 months are over, you hear there's a redundancy, there's a restructuring taking place, and we read it in the newspaper that such and such a manager has been let go. And this is very common now in the corporate Kenya. And a good example is the case of Britam, the financial services company, where at the retirement of the founder CEO, that is Mr. Benson Wairegi, 2 weeks did not pass without us hearing that there's a restructuring going. They've hired a new CEO. And I believe, if I'm not wrong, over 60% of the managers have been let go. This was also the case with Safaricom when the former CEO, Mr. Bob Korimo, passed. When they hired the current CEO, Mr. Peter Ndegwa, we've also heard of rumors, their murmurs, that they are going to restructure the company. And we know what comes with restructuring. It goes without saying that most managers will find themselves out. Some employees, and most of the senior professionals, they will lose jobs. And I don't have to remind you on this. Government, every time a new government comes in place, what happens? If you are a minister, if you are a permanent secretary, the chances of you retaining the jobs, they are very, very low. So what is this that happens whenever a new CEO takes over? And why do new CEOs have to fire managers? And what can you as a manager do to protect your job? Before I share with you the reason why new CEOs would opt to go restructuring the organization and even doing away with some top level staff, it's important to understand where they are coming from. And my point number one is you have to understand this new CEO coming on board. Is he an insider or outsider? Now, if a new CEO is an outsider, that means they've been hired not from within the organization. A good example being the CEO for Britam, who used to work for Old Mutual, and now he's joined Britam. And the case of Peter Ndegwa, who used to work for Diageo, and now he has joined Safaricom. Different, and Peter is from a different industry, different sector. So you find whenever the board, whenever the director, whenever the business owner is bringing someone from the outside, what they are saying, the simple message they are passing to you who is a manager there is, I looked around, I did not find anyone suitable to take over that position. So already they are passing judgment on the current managers that we looked around, and unfortunately we didn't see anyone fit for them to take over that position. So that one, if you're a manager, senior manager, then that should tell you at the back of your mind is there's a confidence issue that the board, that the directors, that the CEO have with you. Now, if it's an insider, if someone has been promoted to that position of the CEO or the leader, then you find chances of them making changes are very low. Why? Because what the board, what the directors are saying is we want continuity. We want the organization to continue the same way it has been performing. We are okay with the management. We have confidence in you guys, and that is why we've even picked one of you. So if I were in your shoes, if I see the board appointing an outsider, then I would have to be very careful. I would have to think twice about my career and about my position, because it means the board wants things to be done in a different way. And things done in a different way means there will be casualties. It goes without saying. So that's number one thing you need to consider. Is the incoming CEO an insider or an outsider? And each have its own implication. The other thing I would want you to really think about is about the decision makers and what kind of brief the CEO has been given, whether it's an insider or outsider. Why? Because whenever a new CEO is being hired, they normally sit with the board and they agree on deliverables. So a lot of times, if the organization is not doing well, the board will task this new CEO with turning around the fortunes of the company. and turning around the fortunes of the company is they will look at the structure, they will look at the people, the capabilities, they will look at what they are bringing to the table, how they've been performing. And unfortunately, it might not even be the idea of the CEO to fire you as a manager. They might have received the instructions from the higher ups, because the directors, they know how you perform. The board, they do know your performance. So by the time they're hiring this CEO, they will tell them the marketing department has an issue. Or look at the finance docket. We have concern on how the finance department is being run. So those are the two things you need to consider. So number one, whether the CEO is coming from the inside or outside, and just think. You may not really know very well, but based on your interaction with the board, based on the vibes that the board has been sending out there, you'll be able to see, why did they hire this person? What mandate have they given this person to come and implement? But then, having said that, even the CEO, they have their own agenda, and the first agenda is to succeed. New CEOs, they are normally under a lot of immense pressure to be able to prove themselves and to be able to perform and deliver results in the shortest time possible. So with that in mind, one of the reasons why new CEOs fire managers is because they are looking for someone to support their agenda. And reason being, if they find you in the organization and either they look at you and they see that you're not competent in that position, or you're not aligning to what they're looking to achieve, you're not aligning to them, then chances are it doesn't matter how competent you are, they're going to let you go. So you have to be supportive of the new CEO. You have to go out there, align yourself to their agenda, get to understand what are they looking to achieve, and be able to support them as much as possible. The second reason, and this one we had discussed, is because they've gotten the brief from the board, from the directors, that such and such a department is not doing so well, so we want you to fix that department. And most likely, they'll start with the leadership of the department, and you'll find yourself then you don't have a job. So having said that, having discussed that, what can you do as a manager to be able to survive, to be able to safeguard your job? Don't wait for things to happen to you. It always helps when you're in charge of things. And having watched a lot of these boardroom, a lot of these changes also happening, because they don't just happen at the top organization. It doesn't just happen at the large organization, even the small ones, it happens. This is what you need to do as a manager so that you can be able to safeguard your job. Number one, you need to understand the organization politics and the dynamics. Whenever you bring people together, whenever people are sharing resources, they are always politics, they are always dynamic. So you need to understand. I'm not saying you actively play politics, but also it's good to be in the know. You need to know, why is the new CEO coming on board? How are we performing as an organization? What is the thinking of the board? Are they looking to turn around things? Are they looking to bring about new changes? So you understand the organization dynamics. Then you need to understand, with a new CEO, you have to prove yourself all over again. It doesn't matter how you've been performing in the past. It doesn't matter how good your job has been. Whether it's a new CEO who has been promoted within the organization or an outsider. In fact, when it comes to an outsider, you have to double your effort in terms of your results, in terms of your performance, because this person, especially in the short term, they'll really be looking at you and how you are performing, and decisions will be made on whether you are going to retain that job or not. So please understand, it doesn't matter whether you've been in that organization for 10 or 20 years, you have to start afresh. You have to start proving yourself all over again. And then lastly, as I conclude, don't ever forget that the new CEO has an agenda. And so it is in your best interest to be able to align yourself to their working style. So if you find that your new CEO likes coming up to the office very early, let's say 6:30, don't be the kind of a person who says, my employment contract says I report at 8:30 and I've been doing that for the last 5 years and I get the job done and I'm okay. Before they understand that you get the job done, and you come at 8:30, things do work in your department, try to align yourself with the new CEO's working style. I remember a situation where this CEO would be calling for a meeting at 6 p.m., 6:30 p.m., and he would always hear that this manager has left for home. And you might argue, Perminus, if I'm able to do my job at 6, why do I have to stay in the office? But remember, when it comes to the corporate world, also perceptions matter. So what happens is this CEO, they kept asking for these meetings, and if this manager is not around, they go ahead and he would have the meetings with the managers who are there. And what happened is this manager, he found himself being sidelined slowly but surely. And within 9 months, with the new CEO coming on board, the office environment was so toxic, and he had to leave that company. So he didn't leave that company because he was not a performer, but from the CEO perspective, they were differing in terms of the working style, in terms of the approach to issues, and that led to a lot of friction. And unfortunately, when decisions have to be made, tough decisions, unfortunately, sometimes you find it is you who is sacrificed as opposed to the big man or the big woman up there. So those are the tips I needed to share with you. So next time you read in the newspapers that a new CEO has been hired and there are all these changes taking place in that organization, then you'll be in a better place to understand. And if you're a manager, it does help to understand things. Don't be in the dark. Whenever there's a new CEO, expect changes. And the whole essence of this video is to make sure that you're prepared and you don't find yourself taken by surprise. Thank you for watching, and subscribe for more informative videos.